Hulk Hogan was larger than life in the ring. But his true story was hidden behind locked doors in Clearwater, Florida. When his family finally opened his private garage, what lay inside shocked everyone who stepped through those doors. Rare, personal, and completely unexpected. The garage hid history far beyond fame and wrestling. What they found inside will leave you speechless and questioning everything you knew about the wrestling legend. Hulk Hogan spent most of his life in the spotlight. Fans saw him wrestle. They saw him act. They saw him become one of the biggest names in entertainment. Yet, there was one place almost no one ever saw. It was hidden behind thick walls in Clearwater, Florida. It was his private garage. This quiet space was connected to the mansion he owned on El Dorado Avenue. The mansion itself was huge and beautiful with 5 rooms, 6 washrooms, a lifter chimney, a pool, and 2 spas. Hogan paid more than $3 million for it, but it was still much smaller than his old place. Before this home, he lived in the Bear House. That mansion was nearly 17,000 square feet. It stood on more than 1 acre of land next to the Intracoastal Waterway. It had everything from a tanning salon to a gym to a hot tub, plus 8 restrooms and a pool area that looked like a resort. Hogan sold that grand property for more than $6 million. Yet, even with all its size and luxury, his heart belonged to a place no one talked about, his garage. Most fans knew Hogan loved cars. What they did not know was how private he was about them. His car collection was impressive and full of rare muscle machines. Some had custom paint jobs. Some had engines strong enough to shake the ground. Others were classic models that had become priceless over time, but never displayed them in public often. These cars stayed locked inside the garage. This was the one space where he could be Terry Bollea and not the superstar Hulk Hogan. According to reports, this garage was more than a simple storage room. It was a workshop. Hogan maintained each car himself with great care. He used trickle charges to keep the engines alive. He polished the metal until it shone like mirrors. He treated every vehicle like a personal treasure. When he walked through rows of cars, he felt a peace that fame never gave him. This room was his sanctuary, a quiet world where engines and memories lived side by side. After his death, the people closest to him stepped inside this garage with heavy hearts. They were family and trusted lawyers. They expected to see expensive cars lined up neatly. What they did not expect was the emotional journey waiting inside. The garage held more than horsepower. It held stories. Opening the garage felt like unlocking a part of Hogan that the world never knew. The big metal doors opened not just to reveal cars, but to reveal a man who had kept his memories safe for years. This secret room showed that behind the fame, behind the strength, and behind the legend, there was a man who loved the simple, quiet moments of working with his hands. And the surprises found inside this garage will leave you wanting to know even more about the hidden life of Agent. His garage was like a museum of engines in emotion, and every vehicle inside had a connection to who he was. The core of his collection showed one thing very clearly. He had a deep love for Mopar muscle cars. Dodge and Plymouth were his first choices, and these brands captured his wild energy perfectly. One of the crown jewels of his garage was a 1968 Dodge Charger RT. This was no ordinary Charger. Reports claimed it was modified for incredible power, and some sources even hinted it could push close to 900 horsepower. It was the kind of car you heard before you ever saw, the kind of machine that made the ground tremble when it started. This car represented Hogan during his peak wrestling years. Bold, loud, untouchable. He also owned 2 1969 Plymouth Road Runners. One was red with black stripes and had the look of a true drag strip monster. The other was sleek and black with an attitude of silent danger. These cars were raw and pure, and they fit Hogan perfectly. They echoed the grit and intensity he carried into every fight. They were fast, unstoppable, and built to dominate. Another unforgettable car in his selection was a 1971 Plymouth Barracuda, often called the Hemicuda. This one was painted in plum crazy purple, a color that screamed confidence and flair. It matched Hogan's showman personality. When he drove it, people stared, not only because it was rare, but because it looked like something a wrestling superstar would own. Eva parked it seemed alive. But Hogan did not only love old-school muscle. He also collected modern monsters. He had a 2018 Dodge Challenger SRT Demon, one of the most powerful production cars in the world. He also had a 2021 Dodge Charger SRT Hellcat Red Eye, known for its massive torque and brutal horsepower. These cars showed that even as he grew older, his heart still raced for speed and force. Surprisingly, Hogan's taste expanded far beyond American machines. His garage also held luxury and European machines. A Ferrari 360 Spider worth around $85,000, a Lamborghini Gallardo around $112,000, a Porsche 911 Carrera worth more than $114,000. These cars were smooth and sharp and showed that Hogan enjoyed elegance along with power. His Bentley Continental G Coupe cost more than $200,000. His Rolls-Royce Phantom was worth even more, marking it as one of the treasures of the collection. There were classics too. A 1957 Chevy Bear worth about $115,000. A Dodge Viper RT10 worth nearly $90,000. A Chevrolet Corvette convertible worth around $72,000. Even his Mercedes-Benz S500, valued at $114,000, showed that comfort mattered to him as much as speed. One more quiet piece stood out. A 1966 Chevrolet Caprice painted black with thin red pinstriping. It was far less flashy than the others. Capri models from that year usually sit between $20 and $30,000 depending on condition. It hinted at a gentler part of Hogan's personality, a part that liked simple strength rather than loud power. Every car in his garage was connected to a trickle charger, so it stayed alive, ready to start at any moment. These vehicles were not props. They were chapters of his life, lined up side by side. But in the darkest corner of the garage sat a mysterious covered vehicle. Its shape did not match any muscle car luxury machine. Its value was unknown. Its story was hidden. And its presence suggested a secret chapter of Hogan's life that no one had ever heard. It was his Chevrolet Corvette CR1, a high-performance sports car he adored. Fast, sharp, reliable, this Corvette was known as one of the strongest cars Chevrolet ever built, and Hogan treated it like a treasure. Unlike some of his outer muscle cars, this one was kept in near-perfect condition. Every inch looked clean and cared for, which suggested that the car was more than a simple toy. It held meaning that stretched beyond speed and style. Reports from people close to him said that Hogan maintained this Corvette with extra attention. The paint was flawless. The tires were always fresh. The engine looked untouched by time. It seemed as if he wanted this car ready at all moments, ready for a drive or ready for a memory. Hogan was known to add hidden switches and custom wiring to some of his vehicles, especially to the Charger he once owned. It is believed he added similar touches to the Corvette. These details hinted that he took security and secrecy seriously inside his garage and wanted full control over what happened within those walls. The real surprise came when the family searched the garage after his passing. Somewhere inside the Corvette, or at least stored with the car, they found a small collection of personal documents. These were not just casual papers. They held legal transcripts, letters, and settlement papers related to his famous lawsuit with Gawker. The lawsuit had shaken his life in ways the public never fully understood. These papers revealed the emotional cost behind that battle. They showed moments of stress, fear, and deep vulnerability. Even though he won legally, the documents showed how wounded he felt inside. One rumor spoke of a phrase written on a note, or draft check found among the papers. It read, "Revenge, not justice." Whether this line came from anger or pain, no one knew for sure. But it showed how personal that legal fight had become. Behind the superstar image, behind the larger-than-life character, was a man struggling with hurt that he kept hidden from the world. That made the garage more than a place for vengeance. It became a vault of his inner life, a space where the power of his public persona met the quiet truth of his private battles. Yet, even after discovering the Corvette's paper trail, the family sensed that something else was still hidden, something delicate, something personal, and no one could decide whether it should ever be opened. Among the hidden treasures in Hogan's garage were handwritten letters, photographs, and journals. They revealed a private side of Hogan that stood in sharp contrast to the loud, unstoppable character he had built over decades. Here in this quiet garage, the line between Hulk Hogan and Terry Bollea finally became clear. Among the most emotional discoveries were the letters. Some were addressed to his children. These pages were filled with love and apology. He wrote about the moments he missed while working. He wrote about long days on the road and nights spent wishing he could be home. These letters showed how deeply he loved his family and how much regret he carried for the time wrestling stole from him. One of the most revealing letters was written to himself. In it, Hogan confessed something that matched the tone of interviews he gave later in life. He wrote, "I'd built the world's biggest character and lost myself in him." Those words captured the struggle of being two people at once. One was Hulk, the invincible hero millions adored. The other was Terry, a man who often felt invisible behind the mask of fame. Reading this letter made it clear that the costume, boots, and bandana were more than props. They were armor, and sometimes that armor grew too heavy. There were journals too. They might have been kept in a lockbox because they held his most private thoughts. In these pages, he wrote about loneliness during tours, about pressure from fans and promoters, and about how fame creates distance even with those you love. He admitted that sometimes the cheers felt empty and that the silence in hotel rooms felt louder than any crowd. Polaroid photos completed the emotional landscape. These were not staged or glamorous. They were raw snapshots of his real life. Some showed family gatherings with children smiling beside him. Others captured backstage moments with fellow wrestlers. There were pictures of shared jokes, long nights, and the brotherhood built inside their ring. But one Polaroid stood out. It showed Hogan standing alone in a garage. No costume, no bright lights. He looked tired, not defeated but human. It was a quiet image of the man behind the muscle. All of these items turned the garage into something more than storage. It became a private museum of his real identity. A place where the public icon and the private man finally stood side by side. Every letter, every photo, every line written in a journal showed the world that behind the legend was a man searching for peace. But under a workbench hidden beneath other boxes, the family found one sealed package. It was marked private. Do not copy. When they finally looked inside, what they saw made them pause. The sealed box under the workbench looked ordinary at first glance. It was wrapped in old tape and labeled in a way that felt almost nervous, as if Hogan wanted to be serene when one opened it unless absolutely necessary. The handwriting was rushed yet careful. The kind of writing someone uses when they are hiding something they both fear and need to keep close. When the family finally lifted it onto the bench and peeled back the tape, they realized they were not just opening a container. Inside were old VHS tapes and similar outdated recordings. These were not promotional reels or television segments. They were home recordings. Some captured family barbecues. Some showed relaxed nights with friends. Some featured fellow wrestlers in quiet moments far removed from the roaring arenas. Each tape had a name written across the front. Savage, Piper, Bischoff, Linda, icons of wrestling. But here they appeared as ordinary people, laughing, eating, talking, or simply sitting beside Hogan during calm moments. These tapes showed the world he lived in. Behind the scenes, the world he rarely shared. One tape carried a far more unsettling title. It read 99 to Never Again. Even touching this tape made their feel heavier. The message suggested regret, or maybe a memory so painful he never wanted to look back at it. No one knows what happened on that tour. But the label alone revealed that Hogan carried scars that the spotlight never saw. The box held more than videos. There were drafts of a memoir he had attempted to write. Pages filled with stories, crossed-out sentences, torn corners, and sudden scribbles that hinted at emotional weight. It seemed he wanted to tell the truth of his life, but could never decide how to begin. Maybe he feared hurting people. Maybe he feared revealing too much. Or maybe the story was simply too painful to finish. There were taped contracts, too. Some had sticky notes attached to them. One note read, "Took the money, regretted it forever." It was a raw confession. It showed that even with success, fame, and wealth, he lived with decisions that haunted him. No one expected Hogan, the larger-than-life superhero, to express guilt. But here, in this dusty box, guilt was everywhere. Old backstage photos were tucked into the corners of the box. Some were faded. Some showed wrestlers sleeping on couches. Others showed Hogan in dim locker rooms looking thoughtful rather than fierce. There were also small props from wrestling tours, a broken armband, a wrist tape roll, tokens from a life lived under bright lights but filled with shadows behind them. The box offered a glimpse into the ghosts that followed him, memories he protected, mistakes he carried, people he missed, moments he could not erase. But the most shocking discovery was not the tapes or the notes. Right beside the box, underneath several heavy tops, was a half-built custom car. And on the hood someone had written a message that cut deeper than any championship belt ever could. When Hogan's family lifted the heavy tarps in the corner of the garage, they expected another finished masterpiece. Instead, they found something far more personal and haunting. It was a custom car still unfinished. There were no plates, no model name,